Millionaire mocks poor customer at the mall and ends up embarrassed in front of everyone. Bradley Thompson watched with disdain as the young man in worn-out clothes tried to enter the electronics store. The successful businessman couldn't accept that someone dressed so poorly would dare to frequent the same upscale mall as him in New York City. "Look what we have here," Bradley said loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "Seems like someone wandered out of their natural habitat." Trevor Wilson kept his head down, clutching the few dollars he had saved through months of hard work. He needed to buy a part for his sick mother's old radio, her only comfort during her long days in bed. "Excuse me, sir," Trevor said politely, trying to step around the businessman who deliberately blocked his path. "Sir?" Bradley laughed, adjusting his designer blazer. "At least you know how to recognize your betters, but I don't. Think you understand? This mall isn't for just anyone. Look at you." The crowd around them began to gather, some laughing along with the businessman, others watching uncomfortably as the public humiliation unfolded. Trevor's face burned with shame as the older man continued to mock him. "How much do you even have there? $50? Bradley taunted, eyeing the money in the young man's trembling hand. "That barely covers parking here. Come back when you can afford something real." A mall security guard approached, drawn by the commotion. Bradley immediately straightened up and pointed at Trevor. "This individual is bothering the customers. Don't you think it's best to escort him out?" "I just wanted to buy a part for my mum's radio," Trevor explained, finally raising his gaze. His eyes held a quiet dignity that contrasted with his worn-out clothes. The guard hesitated, glancing between them. Before he could decide, a woman's voice cut through the scene. "What's going on here?" Everyone turned to see an elegant woman in her 60s, her silver hair perfectly styled and her posture commanding. Bradley's expression shifted instantly. "Dr. Margaret, what a pleasant surprise." "Just handling a minor disturbance, Owen," he said, gesturing dismissively toward Trevor. Margaret Williams, a renowned cardiologist and owner of one of the largest clinic networks in the United States, took in the scene with sharp eyes. Without a word, she walked up to Trevor. "What's your name, young man?" "Trevor Wilson, ma'am." "And what were you trying to buy today?" "A capacitor for my mom's old radio. She's sick, and it's her only entertainment." Margaret turned to face Bradley, her disapproval clear. "Bradley, I've known you since you were just your father George's ambitious son. He'd be deeply disappointed in the man you've become." The smug grin vanished from Bradley's face. Before he could respond, Margaret turned back to Trevor. "Come with me, young man, let's find that part you need." As they walked away, leaving Bradley frozen under the now judgmental stares of the onlookers, Trevor had no idea how this moment of humiliation would completely change his life in the weeks to come. Inside the electronics store, while searching for the capacitor, Margaret studied Trevor's calloused hands and the way he expertly examined the available parts. "You know your electronics," she remarked, not as a question but an observation. "A little, ma'am. Taught myself so I could fix things at home and help around the neighborhood," Trevor replied, carefully selecting the right component. "And your mother, what's wrong with her?" Trevor hesitated before answering, not wanting to seem like he was asking for help. "Congenital heart condition. She's always had it, but it got much worse this past year." Something in Margaret's expression shifted, a mix of professional interest and human compassion. "Where do you live?" "In Hope Gardens, East Side. It's not far from here by bus." After paying for the part, Margaret pulled a business card from her Italian leather purse. "Trevor, I'm a cardiologist. I'd like to examine your mother." "No. Charge just as a friendly consultation," she added quickly, noticing his discomfort. "Here's my card. Call me tomorrow to schedule." Trevor stared in disbelief at the card in his hands. Dr. Margaret Williams, Director of Healthy Heart Network. His heart raced with a mix of hope and suspicion. "Why would you do this for us?" Margaret smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Let's just say I have an interest in people who fix broken things, and maybe I'm looking for someone with your skills." At that very moment, across the mall, Bradley Thompson stormed into his luxurious penthouse. He tossed his jacket onto the Italian-designed sofa and poured himself a generous glass of whiskey. "Damn, Margaret. Always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong, he muttered, loosening his silk tie. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from his assistant. Investor meeting confirmed for tomorrow. Remember, we need the full Marina Bay Resort project. Bradley cursed under his breath. The project was far from finished, and his lead engineer had quit the week before, taking part of the team with him. The pressure was immense, and he knew this project could define the future of his development group. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now continuing. The next day, Trevor helped his mother, Mrs. Edith, get ready for the unexpected appointment with Dr. Margaret. He'd fixed the radio the night before, and the joy on his mother's face as she listened to her favorite program made up for all the humiliation he'd endured. I don't understand why such an important doctor would come here, Mrs. Edith remarked, as Trevor tidied up the small living room of their modest apartment. She insisted, Mom, said it wouldn't be good for you to travel to her clinic. The intercom buzzed promptly at 10. To Trevor's surprise, Margaret arrived with a young doctor carrying a portable echocardiogram machine. This is Dr. Nathan, my assistant, she introduced. I hope you don't mind that I brought equipment to examine your mother properly. For the next hour, Mrs. Edith underwent a thorough examination. Trevor watched anxiously as the doctors worked with quiet efficiency. Finally, after a brief private conversation, Margaret and Nathan returned. Mrs. Edith, your condition is serious but treatable, Margaret explained, sitting beside her. There's a procedure that could significantly improve your quality of life. It's not a complete cure, but it would allow you to live almost normally. Mrs. Edith's eyes sparkled with hope, then dimmed. Doctor, we can't afford something like that. We can barely pay for this month's medication. That won't be a problem, Margaret gently interrupted. We're launching a social program at our network, and you'd be perfect as our first patient. Trevor eyed the doctor suspiciously. And what do you get out of this? Instead of taking offense, Margaret smiled. Besides professional satisfaction? She paused deliberately. Actually, I need your help, Trevor. I noticed how skilled you are with electronics, and I'm having an issue at the clinic with some imported medical equipment that's malfunctioning. The company responsible for maintenance charges outrageous. Fees and takes weeks to fix simple problems. Are you proposing an exchange? A partnership? You help us with the equipment, and we take care of your mother's health. No paperwork, no contracts, just an agreement between people who can help each other. That proposal would forever change the course of Trevor and Mrs. Edith's lives. The following week, as Mrs. Edith began her treatment at Dr. Margaret's clinic, Trevor started working on the faulty equipment, showing a natural talent that impressed everyone. What Trevor didn't know was that the Healthy Heart Network was in advanced negotiations for a major contract with Bradley's Thompson Development Group to build a new hospital unit within the businessman's latest project. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Friday, Bradley hurried down the halls of the Healthy Heart Network's main clinic. He was late for his meeting with Dr. Margaret, where they would finally sign the $1 million contract. As he turned a corner, he nearly collided with a young man wearing the clinic's technical team uniform. For a moment their eyes met, and they instantly recognized each other. "You?" Bradley exclaimed, surprised and indignant. "What are you doing here? How did you get a job in this place?" Trevor straightened his posture, gripping his toolbox firmly. "I've been working here for 2 weeks, sir," he replied calmly, determined not to be intimidated again. "Impossible. There must be some mistake. Margaret would never hire someone like you for a clinic of this caliber." A woman's voice interrupted the conversation. "Actually, Bradley, Trevor has been one of my best hires in years." Dr. Margaret stepped forward, glaring at the businessman. "He saved one of our main CT scanners yesterday, fixing an issue the manufacturer's technicians couldn't solve for months. He saved us nearly $300,000 in repairs and prevented us from canceling dozens of critical exams." Bradley's face turned red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. "I didn't realize you now hire people without formal qualifications, Margaret. Times must be tough for the network." "On the contrary," she replied calmly, "we're growing more than ever because we value real talent, no matter where it comes from. Trevor, you can get back to work. I'll see you later to discuss the new rooms project." As Trevor walked away, feeling an unfamiliar sense of pride, Dr. Margaret turned to Bradley. "Let's go to my office. We have much to discuss about the future of our partnership, or the lack of it." In the elegant director's office overlooking Central Park, Bradley tried to regain control of the situation. The contract with the Healthy Heart Network was vital to his plans. "Margaret, that kid, it was just a misunderstanding at the mall. You know how it is. Sometimes we have to uphold certain standards in our establishments." "Spare me your excuses, Bradley," she cut in, placing a folder on the table. "You publicly humiliated a hard-working young man who was just trying to buy something for his sick mother. That says a lot about your character." "Business is business, Margaret. My personal character shouldn't interfere with our partnership." "That's where you're wrong," she replied, opening the folder. "Our network has values, and one of them is not associating with people or companies that don't share our human-centered vision." Bradley's stomach dropped as she slid the contract aside, clearly signaling the deal was at risk. "What are you saying?" "Come on, Margaret. We're adults here. You're not going to throw away $1 million partnership over something trivial." "It's not trivial to me, but I'm willing to give it a second chance, on one condition." Bradley leaned forward eagerly. "Anything. We can renegotiate terms, deadlines, whatever it takes." "It's not about the money," Margaret explained. "I need someone with management experience to oversee a new social project we're launching, cardiac rehabilitation for low-income patients." "And what does that have to do with me?" "You'll personally coordinate the project. No delegating to assistants, no sending subordinates. You, Bradley Thompson, working directly with underprivileged communities for at least 6 months." The businessman laughed in disbelief. "You must be joking. I have a company to run. And I have a hospital network to manage, yet I still make time for important causes," she shot back, closing her folder. "The choice is yours, Bradley. 6 months of community work under Trevor's supervision, he'll be the project's technical director, or find another partner for your venture." That night, as he drove his imported car back home, Bradley simmered with a mix of anger and disbelief. The idea of working under that mall kid's supervision was humiliating, but losing the contract with Healthy Heart Network would be catastrophic for his business. When he arrived at his penthouse, he found Ashley, his fiancée and the company's PR manager, waiting with a concerned expression. "How did the meeting go?" she asked, handing him a glass of wine. "A disaster," Bradley replied, recounting Margaret's ultimatum. To his surprise, instead of sharing his outrage, Ashley seemed thoughtful. "Actually, this could be an interesting opportunity." "What are you talking about?" "Think about it, Bradley. Your public image isn't the best after that leaked video from the South Bay investors meeting. A social project might be just what we need to improve your reputation." "What video?" he asked, alarmed. Ashley pulled up the recording on her tablet, showing him making dismissive comments about clients who had lost money in one of his past ventures. "It's been circulating on social media since yesterday. The press started calling this afternoon." Bradley sat down, suddenly exhausted. His public image, already tarnished by previous lawsuits, had taken another hit. Maybe Ashley was right. Maybe this social project was exactly what he needed right now. "I'll do it," he finally decided. "But I won't let that Trevor humiliate me." Ashley smiled, pleased to have convinced her fiancé. "Perfect, I'll call PR first thing tomorrow. Businessman Bradley Thompson trades luxury to lead innovative social project. The papers will eat it up." The following Monday, Trevor was stunned to find Bradley in the clinic's meeting room, chatting amiably with Margaret. "Ah, Trevor. Glad you're here," Margaret greeted. "Bradley has agreed to coordinate the cardiac rehab project. You two will be working together for the next few months." The young technician looked incredulously from Margaret to Bradley, who wore a strained smile. "With all due respect, Dr. Margaret, I don't think this is a good idea." "On the contrary," she replied firmly. "It's an excellent idea. Bradley has the administrative experience we need, and you have the technical expertise and social awareness. Together you'll be unstoppable." That same afternoon, sitting awkwardly in the small office that would serve as the project's headquarters, Trevor and Bradley eyed each other in silence. Finally, the businessman spoke. "Let's make one thing clear. I'm only here because I need the network's contract. Don't expect us to be friends or for me to pretend we're equals." Trevor nodded calmly. "I'm also here for a specific reason. My mother needs the treatment Dr. Margaret is providing. But unlike you, I intend to do the best job possible, regardless of our personal differences." For a moment, Bradley seemed surprised by the mature response. "Well, at least we agree on that. Let's keep this strictly professional." The following days were tense. Bradley, used to delegating tasks and receiving finalized reports, now had to deal with budget spreadsheets, meetings with medical equipment suppliers, and interviews with potential patients for the program. To his surprise, he discovered that Trevor was extremely organized and methodical. The young man kept impeccable records and showed an intuitive understanding of patients' needs that Bradley, with all his formal education, couldn't match. 2 weeks into their forced partnership, the first major incident occurred. During a meeting with potential donors, a businessman friend of Bradley made a dismissive comment about handing out charity to the lazy. Before Bradley could intervene, Trevor stood up calmly. "Sir, allow me to show you something," he said, turning on the meeting room projector. On the screen appeared images of heart patients at their workplaces: a construction worker, a house cleaner, a bus driver, a seamstress. Pagita, these people work an average of 12 hours a day, often without weekends off. Their hearts are failing not from laziness, but from overexertion in poor conditions. None of them can afford to stop working to care for their own health. The silence in the room was palpable. Trevor continued, his voice steady. "We're not asking for charity. We're offering the chance to invest in the future of entire families who depend on these workers. A healthy heart means children won't have to drop out of school to replace sick parents. It means fewer public expenses on emergency hospitalizations. It means dignity." When he finished his impromptu presentation, the first to applaud was, surprisingly, the businessman who had made the unfortunate remark. One by one, the potential donors began filling out pledge forms, promising amounts well above expectations. On the way back to the clinic, Bradley drove in silence. Finally, at a red light, he turned to Trevor. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" Trevor shrugged. "I didn't learn. I just spoke the truth I live every day." Something shifted in their dynamic after that day. They didn't become friends, but a reluctant respect began to form. Bradley started listening more and speaking less during patient meetings, observing how Trevor earned the trust of people who would naturally distrust someone like him. At home, Mrs. Edith noticed the changes in her son. Trevor seemed more confident, more self-assured. The treatment was working, and for the first time in years, she could manage small household tasks without being completely exhausted. "Bradley, you've complained so much about. Is he really that bad?" she asked one evening over dinner. Trevor thought for a moment. "He's complicated. He grew up in a different world than ours. I don't think he's ever had to fight for anything in his life." "But you said he's been working hard on the project." "Yes, to my surprise. I think he's starting to realize there's value in things beyond money." What Trevor didn't tell his mother was about the incident that afternoon. One of the cardiac rehab machines had malfunctioned, and no technicians were available for immediate repairs. Without a second thought, Trevor opened the equipment and got to work. Bradley, who was supposed to leave for a meeting with investors, cancelled the appointment and stayed to help, handing over tools and following Trevor's instructions with unprecedented humility. Together, they worked for 4 straight hours, until they managed to solve the problem. "Why didn't you go to your meeting?" Trevor asked when they finished, his hands dirty with grease and oil. Bradley stared at the young man for a long moment before answering, "Because this was more important." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Trevor arrived at work and found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a letter of recommendation signed by Bradley, addressed to one of the most prestigious engineering universities in the country, along with confirmation of a full scholarship. Confused, Trevor went looking for Bradley and found him in the clinic's cafeteria. "What does this mean?" he asked, showing the documents. "Exactly what it looks like," Bradley replied, taking a sip of coffee. "You're too talented not to spend your life fixing equipment. The scholarship includes a monthly stipend for your mother, so you won't have to worry about her expenses while you study." Trevor sat down, stunned by the unexpected offer. "Why would you do this for me?" Bradley hesitated, carefully choosing his words. "Let's just say I'm trying to fix something I broke a long time ago. My own humanity." Before Trevor could respond, they were interrupted by Ashley, who hurried into the cafeteria. "Bradley, we need to talk," she said, casting a quick glance at Trevor. "In private." The businessman excused himself and followed his fiancée into the hallway. Through the glass door, Trevor could see the conversation was tense. Ashley gestured, visibly upset, while showing something on her tablet. Bradley grew paler by the minute. When he returned to the table, he seemed like a different person. "I have to go," he announced, grabbing his jacket. "There's an emergency at the company. Did something serious happen?" Bradley hesitated. "One of my old projects. It seems there are serious structural issues. A building we constructed in San Diego is showing cracks." Trevor immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "That's terrible. Are the people safe?" "The building was evacuated this morning, but—" Bradley ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of distress Trevor had never seen in him. "The company that did the structural assessment belongs to a former partner who has reasons to want to hurt me. I need an independent second opinion, but every engineer in the city is refusing the job, afraid of getting involved in a scandal." For a moment, Trevor considered the implications. If the building was truly condemned, hundreds of families would lose their homes. If it was just a business rival's maneuver, unnecessary panic was being stirred up. "I know someone," he finally said. "My old technical course professor, Richard Harrison. He's the most honest civil engineer I've ever met. If anyone can give an impartial opinion, it's him." Bradley looked at Trevor with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Why would you help me after everything?" Trevor shrugged. "Because it's not about you or me. It's about families who could lose everything." That same afternoon, Trevor, Bradley, and Professor Richard walked through the evacuated building. The experienced engineer meticulously examined every crack, every pillar, taking detailed notes. "So, Richard," Bradley asked anxiously after hours of inspection, "what's your verdict?" The professor adjusted his glasses, looking seriously at the two men. "There are problems, no doubt, but they're not structural, as the initial report suggested. There are flaws in the expansion joints and the drainage system, completely repairable without needing evacuation." The relief on Bradley's face was visible. "So the building isn't condemned?" "Definitely not, but it will need significant repairs in the coming months, and I'll need a reliable assistant engineer to oversee the work." They both looked at Trevor, who blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm not a certified engineer." "Not yet," the professor corrected with a smile, "but I trust your judgment more than many licensed professionals I know." The next day, residents were able to return to their apartments. The press, which had been preparing to report on a major real estate scandal, had to settle for a much less sensational story about preventive repairs. During the impromptu press conference at the building's entrance, Bradley surprised everyone. When instead of speaking alone as was his habit, he called Trevor to stand by his side. "This young man and his mentor were crucial in preventing unnecessary panic," he declared to the cameras. "Thanks to them, dozens of families won't have to spend weeks or months in temporary housing." One reporter, recognizing Trevor, asked the question that would change everything. "Isn't this the same young man you humiliated at the mall a few weeks ago?" A tense silence fell over the press conference. The cameras focused on Trevor's face, then on Bradley, waiting for his reaction. The businessman swallowed hard, clearly uncomfortable. For a moment, Trevor thought he would deny or downplay the incident. Instead, Bradley did something completely unexpected. "Yes, it's him," he admitted, looking straight at the cameras. "And I'm publicly apologizing for my behavior that day. It was arrogant, cruel, and completely unacceptable." Turning to Trevor, he continued, "That day I judged a book by its cover, and I missed the chance to meet one of the most talented and principled people I've ever encountered. Thankfully, life gave me a second chance." Social media exploded with the video of the apology. What could have been a devastating scandal for Bradley's reputation turned into a redemption story that captured the public's imagination. In the following weeks, the unlikely partnership between the businessman and the young technician grew stronger. The cardiac rehabilitation project flourished, attracting more donors and expanding the number of patients served. Mrs. Edith, whose health improved every day, became a kind of mascot for the program, inspiring other patients with her determination and good humor. To everyone's surprise, she formed an unlikely friendship with Ashley, who frequently visited the clinic to observe Bradley's work. During one of these visits, Ashley found Trevor working late on a special project. "What's this?" she asked, eyeing the technical drawings spread across the table. "An idea I had," he explained, showing the sketch of a compact device. "It's a simplified, low-cost heart monitor that patients could use at home. The data would be sent directly to the clinic via their phones, allowing for quick intervention in case of an emergency." Ashley examined the drawings with genuine interest. "This is brilliant, Trevor. Have you shown Bradley yet?" "Not yet. It's just a crazy idea." "Don't underestimate your crazy ideas," she smiled. "Those are the ones that change the world." The next morning, Ashley returned with Bradley and Margaret. Embarrassed, Trevor was practically forced to present his project. "This device would reduce monitoring costs by about 80%, he concluded after a detailed explanation. "And more importantly, it would allow patients in remote areas to access care that's currently impossible due to distance." The three listeners remained silent for a few moments after the presentation. Finally, Bradley spoke. "How much do you need to develop a working prototype?" Trevor blinked, surprised. "I haven't really thought about that. Maybe around $50,000 for the initial components and testing." Bradley and Margaret exchanged glances. "I'll double that," declared the businessman, "and I propose we create a startup to develop and market the device. Trevor would be the technical director and primary shareholder with 51% of the shares." It was Trevor's turn to be speechless. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's an excellent investment," Bradley replied pragmatically. "And because maybe it's time to use my money to build things that truly matter." That weekend, something extraordinary happened. Bradley showed up at Trevor and Mrs. Edith's small apartment, bringing with him a box of professional tools. "I heard your shower was acting up," he explained, slightly uncomfortable with the simplicity of the place. "I thought we could fix it together." Over the next few hours, the millionaire businessman worked side by side with Trevor, following his instructions, patiently learning how to replace heating elements and adjust water pressure. His immaculate hands, accustomed only to signing documents and holding champagne glasses, became calloused and dirty. Later, sitting on the small balcony with cups of coffee prepared by Mrs. Edith, Bradley confessed, "I've never fixed anything in my life. I always threw out what broke and bought new." "How did it feel?" Trevor asked. Bradley contemplated the simple view of the neighborhood, so different from the panorama he saw from his penthouse. "Useful. I felt useful in a way I'd never experienced before." 3 months later, the heart monitor prototype was ready for clinical trials. The startup, named HeartTech, had received investment offers from several venture capital funds. But Bradley and Trevor decided to retain control of the company, accepting only financial support from the Healthy Heart Network. Mrs. Edith, now volunteering as a patient coordinator for the rehabilitation program, became the first user of the device. Her data was monitored 24/7, allowing precise adjustments to her medication and exercise routine. One Friday afternoon, as Trevor and Bradley discussed expansion plans for the social project, they were interrupted by Ashley, who entered the meeting room with a concerned expression. "You need to see this," she said, turning on the wall-mounted TV. On the screen, an investigative reporter presented documents suggesting irregularities at the start of Bradley's business career. According to the report, his first venture had been built on land originally intended for a social housing project. "That was 15 years ago," Bradley defended himself, pale, "and everything was done legally. I bought the land when the social project was cancelled by the city." "Legally, yes," Ashley replied cautiously, "but the report suggests you used insider information obtained through your political godfather to anticipate the cancellation and acquire the land for well below market value." Trevor watched silently, processing the information. Part of him wanted to believe Bradley had changed, that the transformation of the past weeks was genuine. Another part wondered if he hadn't been too naive. "I need to clear this up," Bradley declared, standing. "I'll give an exclusive interview today." "Wait," Trevor interjected. "Before you speak to the press, you need to face the truth. What really happened with that land?" The tension in the room was palpable. For a long moment, Bradley seemed to wrestle with himself. Finally, he took a deep breath. "I did have early access to the information, yes. The housing project was about to be cancelled due to budget cuts, and the land would be auctioned off. I seized the opportunity." "What about the families who were supposed to benefit?" asked Trevor. "They were relocated to a housing complex on the outskirts of the city," admitted Bradley, avoiding Trevor's gaze. "Back then I didn't think about that. I only saw a business opportunity." Trevor felt a wave of disappointment. Just when he had started to believe Bradley had genuinely changed, his past came back to haunt them. "What are you going to do now?" Bradley looked out the window, gazing at the city skyline for a long moment before answering, "What I should do. Fix what I broke." That same night, instead of the defensive interview everyone expected, Bradley called a press conference where he did something unprecedented. He publicly admitted his past mistakes. "Yes, I used insider information. Yes, I prioritized profit over the well-being of families who needed those homes. And no, I can't change the past," he declared, facing the cameras directly. "But I can do something about it now." To everyone's astonishment, including Trevor, who watched on TV, Bradley announced the donation of a plot of land of equal value in an upscale area of the city for the construction of a housing complex for low-income families, with priority given to elderly residents with heart conditions. Furthermore, he continued, the Thompson Development Group will fully finance the construction, and each unit will be equipped with the cardiac monitoring system developed by Heart Tech, ensuring continuous medical care for the residents. The press conference ended with an image no one expected to see just months earlier. Bradley Thompson, the millionaire businessman, moved to tears as he spoke about second chances and the importance of building a legacy based not just on buildings, but on transformed lives. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Sunday, something even more surprising happened. Bradley, Trevor, Mrs. Edith, Margaret, and Ashley gathered on the donated land for an informal lunch. While setting up the grill, Bradley surprised everyone with an announcement. "I've decided to sell my penthouse and move to an apartment near the clinic." "Why?" asked Trevor, surprised. "You love that place." "Because I realized I've lived in isolation for too long," he replied simply. "I want to be closer to the project, the patients, and the people who taught me the meaning of real value." Ashley smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "Actually, we have another announcement," she said, looking affectionately at Bradley. "We've decided to postpone our wedding." Seeing the worried expression on Mrs. Edith's face, she quickly added, "Not because of problems between us. Quite the opposite. We want our union to represent who we truly are, not who we were. And for that, we need to finish the journey we started." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following months, the cardiac rehabilitation project expanded to 3 new units in different neighborhoods on the east side of New York City. Trevor, now officially enrolled in a biomedical engineering program, divided his time between studies and developing affordable medical devices. Bradley, meanwhile, spent less and less time at his development company, delegating responsibilities to focus on the social project. The change in his appearance was striking. His impeccable suits gave way to more casual attire, and his usually tense expression had been replaced by a calmer demeanor. On a rainy autumn afternoon, while installing equipment at the newest project, location, Trevor noticed Bradley lost in thought by the window. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how things could have been different," replied the businessman. "If that meeting at the mall hadn't happened, if Margaret hadn't shown up, if you hadn't decided to help me with the building issue, that's a lot of coincidences, isn't it?" Bradley smiled. "Maybe they're not coincidences. Maybe they're opportunities the universe puts in our path to redeem ourselves." Trevor laughed, adjusting a connection on the equipment. "Getting philosophical, Bradley. Be careful. or people will think the arrogant millionaire really disappeared. And has he? The question hung in the air for a moment. Trevor thought before answering. Not completely. I still catch glimpses of him now and then. But I think he's learning to share space with a better version of himself. Bradley's smile revealed genuine satisfaction at that honest assessment. A week later, during the official opening of the new facility, something unexpected happened. The city mayor, present for the ceremony, announced that the city would partner with HeartTech to implement the cardiac monitoring system in all basic health units across the municipality. This is the kind of social innovation our city needs, the politician declared to the cameras, the union of accessible technology and commitment to the most vulnerable population. After the event, as guests celebrated with cocktails, the mayor approached Bradley in a more private moment. "Impressive transformation, Thompson," he remarked, taking a sip of champagne. "Last time we met, you were more interested in buying public land at bargain prices." "People change, Mayor," Bradley replied coolly. "No doubt. And speaking of changes, I have an interesting proposal. We're looking for a new housing secretary, someone with your real estate experience and your newfound social commitment would be perfect." Bradley studied the politician with a measured look. "What do you need me for? To legitimize questionable decisions with my newfound prestige?" The mayor laughed, uncomfortable with the bluntness. "I see your language has changed too. Before you'd have called this a strategic opportunity. Like I said, people change." As the mayor walked away, visibly annoyed, Trevor approached. "What did he want?" "Offered me a public position," Bradley replied. "Believe it or not, I turned it down." "Why?" "You've always had political ambitions." "Because some bridges once burned are better left unrebuilt," Bradley explained. "My old life was built on self-serving deals and constant bargaining. I don't want to go back to that." On the way home, Bradley took an unexpected detour, driving to the mall where it all began. He parked and watched people coming and going, carrying shopping bags, chatting excitedly, unaware of the drama that had changed his life months earlier. "Why did we come here?" Trevor asked, confused. "Needed to see this place again," Bradley answered, "to remember the man I was." They walked slowly through the luxurious halls, passing the electronics store where Trevor had tried to buy the part for his mother's radio. Without thinking, the young engineer slowed his steps in front of the display. "Strange, isn't it?" he commented. "How one moment can change everything." Bradley nodded silently, lost in thought. As they passed the food court, a man in an expensive suit bumped into a young delivery driver, knocking over the order he was carrying. Instead of apologizing, the executive just gave a disdainful look and kept walking. Something about the scene seemed to stir something in Bradley. Without hesitation, he walked over to the young delivery driver and helped him pick up what could be salvaged. Then, she opened her wallet and handed the young man an amount that clearly exceeded the value of the lost order. "To make up for the trouble," she explained kindly. The delivery guy, initially suspicious, thanked her with a shy smile and hurried away. Trevor watched the whole scene with a mix of surprise and approval. What was that? Bradley shrugged. But his gaze revealed a deeper understanding. Breaking cycles, one small act at a time. The following week, the inauguration of the first phase of the housing project on the land, donated by Bradley, attracted national media attention. The complex, named New Hope Residences, had been designed with a special focus on accessibility and sustainability. During the event, as Bradley spoke about the importance of dignified housing, Trevor noticed something unusual in the crowd. A group of elderly people watched the businessman closely, some with skeptical expressions, others with evident curiosity. After the ceremony, an elderly woman approached Bradley. "You don't recognize me, do you?" she asked, gripping her cane firmly. Bradley studied her wrinkled face for a moment, before answering honestly, "I'm sorry, but no. I'm Mrs. Dorothy. My family would have been one of the beneficiaries of the housing project that was cancelled 15 years ago. The project that made way for your first luxury development." A tense silence fell. Bradley visibly paled while Trevor watched apprehensively. "Mrs. Dorothy, I didn't come here for accusations," the elderly woman interrupted with dignity. I came to see with my own eyes if the change everyone's talking about is real. She looked around at the modern, well-planned housing complex. My husband didn't live to see this. He fell ill in that damp housing project on the outskirts where we were relocated. His heart couldn't take the change, the stress, the feeling of abandonment. Tears welled in Bradley's eyes. They weren't calculated tears meant to impress journalists or improve his public image. They were the genuine recognition of the real impact his past decisions had on real lives. "I'm sorry," he managed to say. His voice choked. "I know this doesn't bring your husband back." "No, it doesn't," Mrs. Dorothy agreed. "But maybe it can save other hearts. I heard you've developed a device that monitors heart problems." Trevor stepped forward, showing the elderly woman the small device they had perfected over the past few months. "Yes, this is it. We're distributing it for free to the residents and patients in the rehabilitation program." Mrs. Dorothy examined the device with interest. "If my George had had something like this..." She left the sentence unfinished, lost in possibilities that would never come to pass. Before Bradley could respond, a group of children ran by, laughing and playing in the newly inaugurated common areas of the residence. The elderly woman smiled as she watched them. "Maybe you can't change the past, Mr. Thompson, but you've given these children a different future. It's a start." That night, after taking Mrs. Dorothy to see her new unit in the residence, Bradley remained silent the entire way back. Trevor respected his space, understanding that the businessman was processing deep and complex emotions. Finally parking in front of the building where he now lived, a comfortable apartment but far more modest than his old penthouse, Bradley broke the silence. "Do you think it's possible to fully redeem yourself, Trevor?" The young engineer considered the question before answering. "I don't know if fully is the right word. I think redemption isn't a final destination, but an ongoing journey." "Getting philosophical now, are you?" Bradley smiled sadly. "I learned from the best," Trevor joked, trying to lighten the mood. "Look, what we've done these past months matters. The lives we're helping matter." Mrs. Dorothy understood that, even with all the pain she carries. "But what about the lives I hurt before? The Richards who aren't here anymore to see any change?" Trevor didn't have an easy answer for that question. Instead, he shared something his mother always said. Mrs. Edith has a saying, the P. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Bradley reflected on the words for a moment before slowly nodding. "Your mother is a wise woman. She'd love to hear that from you in person," Trevor replied. "She's been inviting us to Sunday lunch for weeks." For the first time that day, a genuine smile brightened Bradley's face. It would be an honor to accept the invitation. The following Sunday, a scene unfolded that would have been unimaginable months earlier. Bradley Thompson, the once arrogant businessman, now a student of humanity, was helping Mrs. Edith prepare lunch in the modest apartment's small kitchen. Ashley, who had also been invited, watched with visible surprise as her fiancé patiently chopped vegetables under the matriarch's guidance. "Never thought I'd see this," she remarked to Trevor as they set the table. "He doesn't even know where our apartment's kitchen is." "People change," Trevor replied, echoing the words Bradley had said to the mayor. "Yeah, but some changes are more surprising than others." Over lunch, conversation flowed naturally, as if this unlikely gathering were the most normal thing in the world. Mrs. Edith shared stories from her youth, and everyone laughed at her adventures as a young nurse in a small-town hospital. At one point, when Trevor went to the kitchen to fetch more soda, Bradley followed him. "Your mother is amazing," he remarked, helping pour the drinks. "Now I see where your strength comes from." "She's always been like this, even." "In the toughest times," Trevor said proudly. "When my father left us, she worked 2 jobs to raise me alone. I never saw her give up, not even when her heart condition started showing." Bradley absorbed that with a new level of understanding. His own struggles had always been so different, problems of someone who never had to worry about basic needs, only status and power. "Thank you for letting me be part of this," he finally said. "This family." The word came out hesitantly, as if he wasn't entirely sure he had the right to use it. Trevor noticed the insecurity in the man who once overflowed with arrogance. "You've earned your place here," he simply replied. Not for what you gave or did, but for who you chose to become. After lunch, as they sipped coffee on the small balcony, Margaret called with surprising news. The cardiac rehab program had been selected as a finalist for a prestigious international award in public health innovation. That means we'll need to travel to Geneva next month to present the project, she explained excitedly, and I want both of you to come with me. Trevor and Bradley exchanged surprised glances. Geneva, Trevor repeated, having never left the United States. But what about the patients and the housing project? It'll just be 5 days, Margaret reassured them, and you're the best people to explain how the project works in practice. That evening, after returning home, Bradley found Ashley waiting with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. To celebrate the award nomination, she explained, pouring the drink. Seated on the balcony of the new apartment, overlooking the city park instead of the skyline that had dominated the view from their old penthouse, Bradley seemed lost in thought. "What's on your mind?" asked Ashley, well familiar with that expression. How quickly life changes. 6 months ago, I would have given anything to be nominated for an international award. I would have used it to boost my image, to close new deals, to impress important people. And now? Bradley took a sip of wine before answering. Now all I can think about is the real impact the project is having on families like Mrs. Dorothy's, who will have a decent place to live, on patients like Mrs. Edith, who will enjoy a better quality of life. It's like I've spent my whole life chasing the wrong thing. Ashley looked at the man beside her with fresh eyes. The Bradley she had met years ago, ambitious and ruthless in business, would have been incapable of this reflection. "You know we don't have to postpone the wedding indefinitely," she said softly. "If this is the person you've chosen to be, I'm ready." Bradley held her hand, feeling immense gratitude for having someone to walk beside him on this journey of transformation. "Soon," he promised. "But first I want to finish what we started. The residential project, the health initiative. These are commitments I've made, and I need to honor them fully." The following week, a new challenge arose. During a Heart Tech meeting, they were informed that a major international medical equipment company had filed a lawsuit alleging patent infringement. "They claim our heart monitor violates one of their patented technologies," explained the lawyer hired for the case. "They're demanding we cease production and distribution immediately." "That's ridiculous," Trevor exclaimed indignantly. "We developed everything from scratch, using generic components and original algorithms." Bradley, who in the past would have immediately gone on the offensive, remained calm. "It's clear what they're doing," he observed. "This isn't about patents. It's about eliminating competition. Our device costs 1/10 of theirs and performs just as well, if not better." "What do we do?" Margaret asked worriedly. "An international lawsuit could drain all our resources." Trevor and Bradley exchanged glances, communicating silently with a synchronicity that would surprise anyone who knew their history. "We won't back down," Trevor declared firmly. "And we won't give up," Bradley added. "But we also won't play their game." Over the next few days, while the legal team worked on a formal defense, Bradley and Trevor developed an alternative strategy. Instead of fighting only in court, they decided to take the case to the court of public opinion. With Ashley's help, they organized a social media campaign showcasing how HeartTech's heart monitor was benefiting patients in underserved communities. Emotional testimonial videos began going viral, sharing stories of lives saved by the affordable technology. Meanwhile, Trevor worked tirelessly with a team of engineers to completely redesign the device, maintaining its functionality while altering its architecture enough to bypass any patent issues. 2 weeks before their trip to Geneva, a special report in the country's leading newspaper highlighted the case, framing it as David versus Goliath, the battle for healthcare democratization. The piece contrasted HeartTech's origins, born from a genuine social project, with the international conglomerate's history of aggressive market practices and prohibitive pricing. Public pressure quickly mounted, with doctors, academics, and activists rallying behind the American company. Politicians from different ideological spectrums came together in defense of the national pride represented by HeartTech's social innovation. A day before the preliminary hearing, Bradley received a call from the CEO of the international conglomerate. "Mr. Thompson, it seems we got off on the wrong foot," said the voice on the other end of the line. "I believe we can resolve this more amicably." "I'm listening," Bradley replied politely but firmly. "We'd like to propose a partnership, our global distribution infrastructure combined with your innovative low-cost technology. Everyone wins." Bradley promised to consider the offer and discuss it with his partners. That evening, he, Trevor, and Margaret met to evaluate the proposal. "It's tempting," Margaret admitted. "We'd gain instant access to international markets." "But at what cost?" Trevor questioned. "They'd control production, distribution, pricing. Before long, the device we created to be affordable would become just another luxury product." Bradley, who in the past would have jumped at such prestigious partnership, surprised them both. "I agree with Trevor. We didn't build this to get rich or gain international status. We built it to solve a real problem for real people." The decision was unanimous. They would decline the partnership and stick to their original strategy. The next day, they presented all the documentation at the preliminary hearing, proving the originality of their development, along with the new design that eliminated any resemblance to existing products. To everyone's surprise, the judge ordered an immediate suspension of the case, paving the way for its eventual dismissal. The victory was celebrated as a triumph of social innovation over purely commercial interests. During the week of their trip to Geneva, as they made final preparations, Trevor received unexpected news. Professor Richard, who had become a mentor and close friend, had suffered a stroke. "I need to stay," he declared, devastated. "I can't leave the professor alone at a time like this." Bradley understood immediately. "Of course not. Family comes first," he assured, effortlessly using the word that had once felt so foreign to him. "Margaret and I will represent the project. You take care of the professor." What Bradley didn't tell Trevor was that he would also change his own plans. The next day, while the young engineer stayed by Professor Richard's side at the hospital, Bradley mobilized a team of internationally renowned stroke specialists to evaluate the case. "I want the best treatment options, no matter the cost," he instructed. "And I want complete discretion. Trevor must not know about my involvement." When the doctors recommended an experimental treatment available only at a few specialized centers, Bradley didn't hesitate to arrange everything, always behind the scenes, always respecting Trevor's role and dignity in the situation. On the eve of his departure for Geneva, Bradley visited the hospital, finding Professor Richard already showing significant improvement after starting the specialized treatment. "Mr. Thompson," the elderly engineer greeted, his speech still slightly affected. "Trevor told me about the award. A shame he can't go." "There will be other opportunities," Bradley replied. "What matters is your full recovery." Professor Richard smiled knowingly. "You know, these new doctors who appeared out of nowhere, with treatments insurance wouldn't normally cover. Quite convenient, don't you think?" Bradley kept his expression neutral. "You've always had an excellent professional reputation. It's only natural you'd receive the best care." The professor murmured, unconvinced. "In any case, thank whoever is behind this. Tell that mysterious person I understand what true redemption means." Realizing he couldn't keep the secret any longer, Bradley nodded with a faint smile. "I'll tell that person. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear you're recovering well." As he left the hospital, Bradley ran into Trevor in the hallway, who looked visibly exhausted after days of constant vigil. "How is he?" Bradley asked gently. "Surprisingly well," Trevor replied. "The doctors are calling it a miracle. They've never seen someone his age recover so quickly." Sometimes life surprises us in the best way. Trevor studied Bradley's face for a moment, as if searching for something. "You had something to do with this, didn't you, with those specialists who showed up out of nowhere?" Bradley hesitated, but the honesty he'd cultivated over the past months wouldn't let him lie. "I just made a few calls, that's all." "Why?" Trevor asked, genuinely curious. "You barely know the professor." "Because he's important to you," Bradley answered simply, "and your family." In that word spoken with such ease and sincerity lay all the transformation of the past months. Moved, Trevor hugged the man who had once publicly humiliated him, but whom he now considered a true friend. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." "Don't thank me," Bradley replied equally. "Emotional. I'm just trying to be the man you and your mother believed I could be." At the airport the next morning, one last meaningful moment unfolded. As Bradley and Margaret waited to board, a familiar figure approached, Mrs. Dorothy, the elderly woman, whose husband had passed away after being displaced due to Bradley's first development project. "I heard you're presenting the project at an international conference," she said, leaning on her cane. "I wanted to give you this in person." In her trembling hands, she held a small wrapped package. Bradley carefully accepted it, and upon opening, it found an old framed photograph, a smiling middle-aged man in a construction worker's uniform. "This is my George," Mrs. Dorothy explained. "He was a bricklayer, helped build many of the buildings in this city, including some of yours." Bradley held the picture frame with reverence, recognizing the symbolic weight of the gesture. "Why are you giving this to me?" "So you can take him with you," the elderly woman replied with dignity. "So when you talk about this heart-saving project, you remember who helped lay the foundation of your fortune. Take my George to the world, Mr. Thompson." With tears in his eyes, Bradley promised he would, that George's story would be told alongside all the others that made up Heart Tech's journey. In Geneva, before an international audience of experts, investors, and health officials, Bradley began his presentation in a way no one expected, by showing the photograph of a bricklayer from the United States. "This is George's story," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A man whose heart couldn't withstand social injustice." For the next 40 minutes, he told the full story, his own journey from arrogance to humility, the fateful encounter with Trevor at the mall, the transformation of a cardiac rehab project into a revolution in healthcare accessibility. When he finished, the audience rose in a heartfelt standing ovation. The award was unanimously granted to the American project, along with substantial financial backing for its global expansion. But the real prize came in the form of a phone call from Trevor that night. "Professor Richard was discharged today. The doctors say he'll be able to return to work in a few weeks with some limitations." "That's wonderful," Bradley replied sincerely. "He said something interesting before leaving the hospital," Trevor continued. "Said they now understand why Mrs. Edith and I saw something in you that others didn't." "And what would that be?" "A heart, hidden under layers of arrogance and fear, but a heart all the same." As he hung up the phone, Bradley looked out his hotel window at the lights of Geneva, reflecting on his journey. From a businessman who once mocked a poor young man at the mall to someone who now understood the true value of things. The next morning, before the official award ceremony, Bradley and Margaret held a video call with their team back in the United States. Trevor, Mrs. Edith, Ashley, Professor Richard and several patients from the program had gathered at the main clinic, eager to share the moment. "We're so proud of you," Trevor said, speaking for everyone. "This is just the beginning," Bradley replied, his voice steady with quiet determination. "When we return, we'll start expanding to other cities. There are so many hearts waiting for us." After the call, as they prepared for the ceremony, Margaret watched her partner with admiration. "You know, when I pushed for that partnership between you and Trevor, I never imagined it would go this far." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Bradley smiled. "I needed someone to show me the way back to my humanity, and Trevor was the perfect person for that." On stage, as he accepted the International Award trophy, Bradley made one final symbolic gesture. He placed a photograph of Richard beside it. "This award belongs to all the Richards and Ediths of the world," he declared. "To those whose hearts carry the weight of inequality, but also the hope for a fairer future." Back in the United States a week later, a surprise awaited the Heart Tech team. News of the International Award had sparked widespread interest in the project, with requests for implementation pouring in from different states and even neighboring countries. At a press conference, someone asked Bradley if, now with international recognition, he planned to return exclusively to his real estate business. "My development group is still running thanks to an excellent management team," he replied, "but my time will be dedicated mainly to expanding Heart Tech and the housing project. I've learned that building homes for those who truly need them is far more rewarding than putting up skyscrapers for the wealthy. When asked about his personal transformation, now the subject of news reports and even business school case studies, Bradley looked directly at Trevor, who was watching from the front row. "It all started with a moment of shame," he admitted. "When I publicly mocked a hard-working young man at the mall, I had no idea I was facing someone who would teach me more about worth and dignity than all the business schools I ever attended." 3 months later, at the inauguration of the second phase of New Hope Residences, Bradley and Trevor walked through the newly completed apartments, making sure everything was perfect for the incoming families. "You know what's ironic?" Bradley remarked, watching as families began arriving with their belongings. "This is the simplest real estate project I've ever done in terms of luxury and finishes, yet it's the only one I'm truly proud of." Trevor smiled, understanding completely. "That's because here you built more than walls and roofs. You built possibilities." At the community center, another surprise awaited Bradley. A group of residents had organized a small thank you ceremony. Mrs. Dorothy, now the head of the Residents' Council, spoke on their behalf. "When we found out Mr. Thompson was behind this project, many of us were skeptical," she admitted, addressing the small crowd. "After all, we knew his reputation. But today, we see not just decent apartments, but a transformed man." To everyone's surprise, she handed Bradley a simple plaque made by the residents themselves, which read, "To the man who learned that the greatest value isn't in the possessions we own, but in the hearts we touch." Bradley, now comfortable, with his emotions in a way he never could have been in the past, let the tears flow freely as he thanked them. "You've given me far more than I could ever repay," he declared. "You've given me a second chance at being human." That evening, during dinner at Mrs. Edith's house, which had now become a weekly tradition, Ashley made an important announcement. "Bradley and I have finally set our wedding date," she said joyfully. "And we'd like it to be a simple ceremony right here with only the people who truly matter." Trevor and Mrs. Edith exchanged surprised glances. "Here? But you could have it anywhere in the world," Mrs. Edith exclaimed. Bradley smiled, holding his fiancée's hand. "This is where I found my real family. I can't imagine a more meaningful place." On the wedding day, the small apartment was decorated with simple flowers. Only 20 guests were present. Trevor, Mrs. Edith, Margaret, Professor Richard, Mrs. Dorothy, some patients from the program who had become close friends, and a few of Bradley's former colleagues who had supported his transformation. During the ceremony, when it came time for the vows, Bradley surprised everyone with a symbolic gesture. He pulled 2 small objects from his pocket, the picture frame with Richard's photo and an electronic component. "This capacitor," he explained, holding up the small piece, "is what Trevor went to buy at the mall the day we met. He wanted to fix his mother's radio. I wanted to flaunt my power by humiliating someone I saw as beneath me." Looking at Ashley, he continued, "I promise to build our marriage the way Trevor builds devices that save lives, with precision, care, and love. And I promise to honor the memory of people like Richard, always remembering that our actions affect real lives." Ashley, moved, responded with equally meaningful vows, promising to stand by Bradley not just in moments of success, but especially in the ongoing journey of becoming a better person. After the ceremony, during the small reception, Trevor raised his glass for a toast to second chances and to hearts that, even when broken, can be mended. As everyone applauded, Bradley looked around at this unlikely group of people who had become his true family. From an arrogant businessman who mocked a poor young man at the mall, he had transformed into someone who finally understood the true value of things, and it had all started with a moment of shame that, paradoxically, became the first step toward redemption. The end of the story. Dear listener, did your heart warm to Bradley and Trevor's journey? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of transformation and redemption that touch our souls. Tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed such a profound change in someone?